Welcome to the To Fight For podcast. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Heather. We're offering you a seat at our table to join our conversations, which center on healing through reimagining hospitality in relationships. This season, we are focusing on building and maintaining authentic, healthy friendships.
Our friendship has been through the ringer, but now it's stronger than ever because we chose to fight for it. Our hope is to inspire you to fight for yours.
Hey, boo.
Hi.
Hey, y'all. We're back. Still fighting for all of you, for us, for our friends, all of our relationships.
All of our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Some days are easier than others.
Mm-hmm. That's true. But we're still fighting.
We are.
With open arms, not with our dukes up.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
although we both do have boxing gloves.
Yes, we do both have boxing gloves, and I really wanted to use them this morning. We have a 15-foot tree in our living room, and it was supposed to be 12 foot, but when we picked it up and got it in our house, we realized it was not 12 feet. It was definitely 15, so it's almost grazing the ceiling in our living room. And we took off the ornaments a few weeks ago, but once a tree of that size becomes a permanent fixture in our home, it's really hard for us to part with it. But we finally decided to take the lights off and dispose of this beautiful monstrosity. And rather than unhooking all of the 8 million strands off of the tree, we ended up with one big ball of lights where you don't really know where one strand begins and the other one ends. And oh man, yeah, that was not on me.
That's the worst. Because Christmas lights, they get tangled up so easily. And you can tell the difference between where one strand starts and the other one ends.
And to untangle them, I feel like you have to put your whole body into it. It becomes like one of those vibration plates where you're like shaking the lights and your whole body is twitching. I mean, it's intense.
And then sometimes light bulbs break depending on what kind of lights you use. It's a hot mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ironically, it made me think about what we were going to talk about today on this podcast. Our topic today is on codependency and enmeshment. And as I was, looking at that big ball of lights, I'm like, that's a perfect example for what enmeshment might look like in a friendship where there's just no boundaries, where basically two people become the same person and you can't really see where one person ends and the other person begins.
Yep. I think before we talk about enmeshment, let's talk about codependency because I think that's a really great start from our last podcast.
Okay.
Because our last podcast was on groups. And in groups, sometimes there's friends or maybe even multiple friends that are codependent on each other.
Can you explain or define codependency?
So codependency is actually a learned behavior, and it's typically learned from your childhood. So when you stop and think about your mom, your dad, or maybe you had an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent who raised you, if they had a codependency relationship with somebody who raised them, then typically that gets passed on.
Okay.
So it comes from your childhood. It's a dysfunctional behavior pattern where a person becomes overwhelmingly invested in another person.
Okay.
So they become so overly invested that a lot of times they neglect their own needs. They neglect their own desires. They neglect their own opinion. They kind of lose themselves because the only thing that they care about is the happiness and the comfortability of someone else.
Okay.
And if we look at this from like a mental health perspective, which I know we're going to talk about friendship, but I'm sure there's listeners out there that can relate to some codependency maybe in their family. It doesn't always, but typically codependency relationships circle around people who abuse substances
Okay.
or have chronic illnesses. It could be a chronic illness, mental health illness, major mental health illness, like schizophrenia, bipolar, things like that. Or it could be a chronic illness, a physical illness.
Okay. Why do you think that is? Why does it center around those issues?
It's a great question. I want to use this example. I don't believe that I have a codependent relationship with my kids, but I could definitely see how that could have developed
Hmm.
had I continued to let generational patterns from my childhood continue into adulthood. Luckily, I squashed some of those with therapy
Okay.
and my own growth, but
Hmm.
I could easily see how a mom or a caregiver would create a codependent relationship because, and my
Hmm.
kids' illnesses. I have my three boys, all three of them have had illnesses in their life. And some of them major illnesses and
Hmm.
diseases. So I could see how I could lose myself in them because I want to make all of their pain go away. I want to make sure that they're comfortable.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter if I'm up all night making sure that everything is peachy keen for them. I'm neglecting my own needs for sleep, my own need for rest, my own need to be with other adults because now I just want everything to be about my kids
Hmm.
and they have to be comfortable and happy no matter what, even
Hmm.
if I'm not comfortable and happy.
Okay. So you're prioritizing the needs of others. How would you say? So now we can look at that with mental health or with physical chronic illnesses, you were saying.
Hmm.
What about when you have this need to care for other people so desperately in a friendship and you can't tie that to a chronic illness or some sort of mental health issue? Would you see this stem from maybe if you experience divorce? I feel like I need to overcompensate or make this person happy to stay. Or is there a fear of abandonment? Are there any other issues that might work behind this?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think abandonment issues, anxiety disorders,
Hmm.
all of those things can also help create a codependent relationship.
Hmm.
But when you look at a lot of the studies, a lot of the codependency stems from our childhood.
Okay.
But you can develop it. I'm not saying you can't have
Hmm.
it as an adult. Like had a mom who was codependent on you to make her happy and
Hmm.
to fill her cup up.
Hmm.
And if you didn't do that, then she was always walking around sad and she was
Hmm.
upset.
Hmm.
You're definitely going to have to be careful of codependent relationships
Okay.
in your adulthood. But like you said,
Hmm.
if there was a divorce and maybe in that divorce, you guys have children together,
Hmm.
that could become a codependent relationship, even though you're not married anymore,
Hmm.
because you want to make sure that the other person is happy and that they're comfortable so that when you are shared children, go visit the other person, that your kids have a good time and that they're happy. I
Now, it's
think,
good and healthy to care about these
yes,
things, right? You want to be actively participant in your child's life, right? So there's a healthy way to approach this. But codependency, what you're saying, is more of I'm so concerned about how everybody else feels that regardless of how I feel, I'm going to keep investing or I'm going to possibly make excuses for this person's behavior.
yes, yeah. So the codependents try to fix the things,
Hmm.
fix the problems. So I
Okay.
like what you just said there because I,
Hmm.
I don't think I said that yet, that they try to shield from consequences.
Mm, okay.
So if two people, okay, there's a codependent relationship going on,
Hmm.
and it's easy for me to use the example of, let's just say, a mom, since we're both moms, and a
Hmm.
child.
Hmm.
And maybe the child suffers from consuming too much alcohol. Okay,
Hmm.
this is an adult child. They're 21, and the
Hmm.
mom is trying to fix the child.
Hmm.
So let's say the parents are married, the dad saying, we need to hold this child accountable. We can't just keep giving them money. Maybe they got into a car accident
Hmm.
because they were driving under the influence,
Hmm.
and mom wants to just fix all of the problems with no consequences.
Hmm.
And then the other parent's like, no, there has to be consequences. Which one has the codependent relationship?
Mm, the mom does in that
Yeah.
scenario.
Uh
Yeah.
huh.
Okay.
So that's another way that I think about codependent relationships. Are you trying to fix the problems so that the person who made a poor choice doesn't experience the consequences,
Mhm. Okay.
which can happen in friendships too.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think it's important to note too that as we've been talking on this podcast for our last several episodes, we talk about the ability to confront one another in love by calling in, saying, "Hey, I'm not feeling safe here. Please come into this space and let's work through these things so that everybody can feel at peace in this relationship."
Hmm.
As I'm hearing you talking, codependency to me, what is starting to look like is maybe you behave in a certain way. Let's say, I think we've used this example in the past where you and I have plans. You call me up and you break them. You're like, I just want to stay in tonight and not do anything. And then you get a call to go do something else and you go out and do that other thing. And then I find out about it and I'm hurt. And then I approach you and I say, we had plans and you totally bailed on me and went and did something else. A codependent response on my end might look like, it's okay. I'm okay. Like
Yes.
it's okay. I'm not going to get upset about it. I know that you haven't seen that person in a while, even though my feelings are hurt. Don't worry about it.
Hmm.
And then you go and you do it again because I wasn't upset or I didn't communicate my feelings the first time around. And then that second time I say, it's okay. It's just who you are. You just do that sometimes and I'll deal with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
You're just making up excuses for that friendship,
Mhm.
even though you don't like it.
Mhm.
If somebody was to do that, you don't like it, but you're not going to say anything because your happiness depends on my happiness.
Mm.
So as long as I am happy and I don't have to deal with any consequences,
Mhm.
then we're all peachy keen.
Mhm.
Our friendship is good.
Well,
Even
it's peachy keen to the outside looking in, correct?
correct.
Because if I'm never calling you out, I'm certainly not okay.
Yes.
I'm probably never okay. In
Yes.
fact, I would say in this scenario, and you can refute this if it needs to be refuted, but I would say fear. There's probably some sort of element of fear attached to codependency.
Abandonment.
Yeah.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Okay.
Anxiety.
Hmm.
People who are codependent on somebody else usually have some type of anxiety disorder and some type of attachment
Okay.
issues, which is why they tend to stem from childhood.
Hmm.
Because
Right.
not that anxiety has to stem from childhood, but attachment disorders do stem from childhood.
Well,
And
it's probably something that we've carried with us our whole life. We're not even aware of it. We
right.
probably don't recognize what that looks like as a child or even in high school, maybe not even college, because we're figuring out so many new things about ourselves. But then as we start to get in your routine of adulthood, we can start to see these patterns probably a little bit
Yeah.
more clear.
Hmm.
So I have a question about codependency then. When we say that there is a codependent relationship, does it mean that both people in the relationship are codependent or can just one person be codependent and the other person be healthy and recognize, ooh, this doesn't feel good to be on this receiving end of codependency?
That's a great question. In my experiences, one person is very codependent on the other person,
Okay.
and the person who is not codependent on the other usually doesn't recognize it.
Okay.
Because if they're making poor decisions or they're getting in trouble, and then you come bail me out of my trouble, in my mind, I'm just like, hey, Heather just keeps helping me.
Mhm.
Or I can cancel plans with you, but then that same exact night we were supposed to have plans, I'll go hang out with this other friend.
Mhm.
And geez, Heather never gets upset with me.
Mhm.
This is great. I can do whatever the hell I want. And I don't have to deal with the consequences because we never have an uncomfortable conversation about any of it.
Mhm. Boy, I almost feel like, as we're talking about this example, this could probably open up the door. We've previously talked about narcissism,
Yeah.
where you could end up with one person being codependent and the other person taking advantage of that if they do recognize it,
Hmm.
making the relationship all about them. And then you have this very awful dynamic of someone who's codependent constantly trying to make the narcissist happy, who's all about them.
Yeah.
That would be dynamite,
That
like
would
in a
be dynamite. Yeah.
bad way. Hmm.
That would not be good. Whew, that would not be good explosion right
Hmm.
there.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. But it could go this way. Let's say you're codependent on me. You're making up excuses for my behavior. But then because I'm self aware, I start recognizing, or maybe someone else in my life calls me in.
Mhm.
Remember, we talked about this. They're calling me out, but we're saying they're calling us in
Mhm.
to a conversation so we
Mhm.
can talk about things.
Mhm.
So they call me in, and then I realize, oh my gosh, I've, I've been doing this to Heather, and she hasn't said a single word to me. And then I go have a conversation with you, and you can't recognize that pattern of behavior.
Okay.
That can also happen.
Hmm. It's almost like a lens through which I see. But that would require, if, if you're my friend and we are starting to become self-aware of this, if I'm exhibiting these traits, that's where then you would start calling me in. Hey, I actually recognize that what I've been doing is wrong, but you're not saying anything about it. And we need to
Hmm.
have a talk about what's really going on here. How do you feel in this situation?
It's really hard to navigate codependent relationships as a therapist if I'm not doing family or couples counseling,
Hmm.
because then you're not hearing both perspectives. So if you're an outsider looking in, maybe at your two friends, you could probably easily spot it. But if
Hmm.
you're in it, it's going to be much harder to understand and step outside of it and notice what are the unhealthy patterns and behaviors.
Hmm. I think that leads into enmeshment, what you just said.
Hmm.
Because, and I go back to that string of lights. There's multiple strands of lights, but all we see is one big ball of lights, and you can't tell which light belongs to which strand or the same strand. And with enmeshment, that's where two friends, two people, but we're talking about friendship here. Two friends become so interconnected in their
Yeah.
lives that there's no boundaries.
Hmm.
So, with what you were just talking about, if we are in a relationship that is enmeshed, there's no way one of us is going to be able to spot codependency
Hmm.
or probably any other behavioral pattern because how you behave impacts my happiness, how I behave impacts your happiness. And there's almost this sense of oneness.
Yeah.
And there can be unity. And we're going to talk later on about what a healthy relationship looks like in terms of being unified, having healthy boundaries, and being able to have a healthy, intimate relationship where there is a close connectedness between the two people. But it doesn't mean that I need to forsake my boundaries, my white picket fence, for the sake of making someone else happy or feel included in all things. And I use that as an example because there might be an instance where you just want to have your family present at a certain event. Let's say it's a birthday.
Hmm.
You just want your blood relatives there.
Hmm.
And let's say, for example, you're having a birthday dinner for one of your kiddos. You just want an intimate evening. The next day, I find out that you didn't invite my family, and I'm like, what? Why wouldn't you have invited us? Like, why wouldn't you have included us in your family's birthday? Like, we love your kiddos. You can respond with, well, we just wanted to have an intimate evening, just our family. And I would say enmeshment would be a root cause of that sort of response to not being included because when there is no boundaries, there becomes this automatic expectation that everything you do, I'm going to do.
Hmm.
Or whoever your friends, I'm going to be friends with. Or wherever you go, I'm going to go. You take a vacation, I'm going to be there. There's just no line,
Right.
there's this like synonymous, oneness between two friends. So I think when we think about this codependency, it's also important to bring in this idea of enmeshment where there are no boundaries. It's so hard to identify those sort of behaviors that can harm a relationship when we cannot see the differences between us in terms of the fact that we are not the same person.
Yeah. Hmm.
We're not a package deal.
We're not a package deal. Yeah. There have been times that that has happened with us
Hmm.
where we've had somebody who's said to us, oh, well, I invited you guys both. Or I invited you, Jamie, and I also invited Heather. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
cool,
Okay, great.
cool, great.
You
I
can
would
invite
still
whoever you
come.
want. Yeah.
I would still come even if Heather wasn't invited, and
Uh-huh.
vice versa.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
like, we're not a package deal. We're two
Mhm.
separate people that have a really great friendship that's doing a podcast, and we do life together, but that
Mhm.
doesn't mean we have to do all of life together.
Mhm.
I do wanna say from a therapist's view, enmeshment is a type of codependency. It's a form of codependency.
Mhm.
So you have codependency, and then, in my professional opinion, enmeshment would be under that as something you didn't deal with the codependency relationship, and now it just got even worse.
Mhm.
That ball of lights got even more tangled, and now light bulbs are maybe breaking and there's knots in it, and
Mhm.
it's going to be really difficult to fix it
Mhm. Yeah.
because it's blurred, exactly like what you were saying. It's blurred emotions, it's blurred behaviors, it's excessive dependency on somebody else.
Mhm.
um and so if you're not happy, then I can't be happy.
Mhm.
Or if you're uncomfortable and anxious, then I'm uncomfortable and anxious.
I would think. Now, I actually have not ever been in an enmeshed relationship. I have felt that there are people who've wanted to be enmeshed with me, and as a very free-spirited person, that feels suffocating to
Mm,
me.
mm,
I can't speak from it from being on the inside of this, but it for me would feel very suffocating. How do I catch my breath? How do I breathe in a relationship where everything I do, everything I say, everything I feel is mirrored by somebody else so closely? That to me sounds draining, emotionally exhausting.
mhm. Yeah. But in an enmeshment relationship, if both people are enmeshed equally, they're not even probably recognizing
Mhm.
that it's suffocating and that
Mhm.
it's unhealthy.
Mhm.
But I do agree with you that one person can try to become enmeshed with the other person.
Mhm.
And that person, if I was trying to enmesh myself in you, my boundaries go out the window. They
Mhm.
become blurred.
Mhm.
I can't make a decision for myself. So
Mhm.
when we're going to go out to dinner, even though I might really, really love Thai food, which is real, I do love Thai food,
Mhm.
but maybe you don't like it. I'm not going to tell you, let's go to the Thai restaurant that I heard that just opened. That's so good,
Mhm.
because I want to do whatever's going to make you happy.
Mhm.
Because if you're not happy, then it affects everything.
Mhm. Yeah.
Which is why, as you're listening to this, it seems like we're talking about codependency, because enmeshment is a form of codependency.
Mhm.
But enmeshment is much bigger because both people are
Mhm.
participating in it.
So I think I think this is why we wanted to talk about boundaries first, because
Yeah.
if you're sensing that someone wants to be enmeshed, where there's just this constant jealousy, constant, why didn't you invite me? This constant, I'm really hurt because you didn't ask me to do this. Or, someone who feels like they're not included in your life simply because you have your own life apart from them.
Hmm.
That is where you have to put boundaries in place because it's very clear that this other person does not have any.
Yes. And I wonder if the biggest way this can show up in friendships, from my own experiences and from looking at other people's experiences in a friend group, a lot of this starts to happen because you're getting invited to something and I'm not getting invited.
Mm-hmm.
So then I start to get jealous or I start to get upset.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of my childhood stuff starts coming up. And maybe I had a codependent relationship with a caregiver. And so then I try to start enmeshing myself
Mm-hmm.
with you, because if I can get close enough to you and then you get invited to those things that I was not invited to, maybe I can get invited if I
Mm-hmm.
become close enough to you.
Mm-hmm. So it's almost like a neediness is tethered to this enmeshment, this
Hmm.
need to feel connected, tethered to something, of finding a place of belonging.
Yeah.
So I'd like to segue here because when we talk about a place of belonging and we think about the body of Christ, we all have a place where we belong. And I love the image of the body of Christ, that we are all members of the same body, but we all have different functions. And this goes back to the book of Romans, and Paul is teaching a church that looks different. The members of the church look different. This is very applicable to today. This is a
Mhm.
timeless lesson where we can look at people with a lot of differences and say, we all belong. What's happened today is we want to fit in by looking like someone else, or we want to latch on or enmesh ourselves with people that we idolize or want to find belonging with. However, what Paul teaches is we all play a different role or a different part. We are a different part of the body. We work as one function. There's one body with many parts. So you have a different part than I do. We're great friends, but we are not the same part.
Mhm.
And I think if we are struggling with enmeshment, something that we need to keep in mind is we need to, in any relationship, and this is also true for my marriage, my relationship with my kids, my family members, I have my own identity in the body of Christ. I don't need to be so enmeshed, not even with my husband, on
Mhm.
every single thing. When I come home from a night of the girls, my husband, and I know this is his way to connect with me, he will ask me, so what'd you guys talk about? And a way that I can set a boundary there by respecting the integrity of the conversation that I've had with my friends is say, well, we talked about marriage tonight, but I'm not going to give him all of the details. That's a boundary that I have with my husband. We're not so enmeshed in every area of our life where he needs to know everything. We are one person and we are unified, but we also are different members or different parts of the one body.
Yeah.
If we're looking at enmeshment, a healthy approach is to step back and say, what part do I play? What part does the person that I feel like there's enmeshment happening with, what part do they play? How can we stay two different individuals and come together with healthy boundaries, love one another through those boundaries, but still maintain autonomy in who we are, where we both feel safe, our needs are both being met, and there's a sense of mutuality in the relationship.
Mhm. I like that example that you gave about you and your husband. When you gave your example, he's doing it because he just wants to check in on
Hmm.
you, make sure
Right.
you had a good time.
Hmm.
But if it was, well, why aren't you going to tell me? Tell
Hmm.
me what you guys talked about.
Hmm.
What do you mean you can't tell me? We're married, Heather.
Yeah.
You should be able to tell me everything. I should be your person. So, whatever
Mhm.
you talked about on that girls' night, I should know every detail. You're not allowed to keep secrets from me.
Oh, that just gave me tingly arms. We've talked about that feels suffocating. Nope, don't do that to me.
But that would be enmeshment, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
he's
totally.
not going to let it go. And I know he
Mhm.
doesn't do that. But if somebody is having that conversation, that is probably an enmeshment relationship.
Mhm.
You are allowed, if you are married, you have a partnership, in a friendship, in a caregiver and child, you are allowed to have your own life.
Mhm.
You are allowed to have conversations where your significant other or your caregiver doesn't know every single detail.
Mhm.
It's okay. And I'm going to even go so boldly, which people are probably going to disagree with me on this, but I'm going to say it anyway. For the parents out there, your kids are allowed to have their own life with their own friends and have their own conversations, and you don't need to know every single detail.
Mhm.
That's part of growing.
Mhm.
That's part of developing. That's part of puberty and them trying to figure out who they are, especially when they're teenagers.
Mhm.
It's important to ask questions to check safety, but it's not important to know every single detail.
Mhm. Right. I think it's important to allow one another to breathe. We need to
Mm.
remember that growth happens in a relationship when we're allowed to ask questions, but the questions I'm referring to are, is this good for me? Or
Hmm.
is this good for you? Or how can we move forward and alter this pattern that doesn't feel very good right now?
So, one thing that I want to talk about is, bringing in this hot button topic,
Mhm.
that can be related to friendship, which is what podcast is about, right? But
Mhm.
it can also be related to a broader sense,
Mhm.
and that is
Dun dun dun.
politics.
Politics. Oh, I just love that word. I'm kidding. If you know me, you know I hate that word. I live in a divided house. And basically, what that means is that there's one thing that makes me and my husband fight. The word we just said that started with a P, the P word, we'll call it.
Hmm.
And I share that because my husband and I, despite the fact that we have a different approach to looking at politics, we have chosen to love one another and honor our relationship over our stance. That
Hmm.
comes first. So when we get to a point where this conversation is just going in circles, we will say, okay, done the relationship. Let's bring that back into focus here. And I want to say that first because I think the reason we wanted to bring politics into this particular conversation isn't just to see how it impacts our relationships, but I think that our relationship with our political views today, in today's 2026 culture, looks a lot like enmeshment. What we see right now is people pledging allegiance to a political party and willing to stand with their belief system, regardless of how it impacts real live relationships with people that we love, with strangers alike. As Jesus followers, we are called to love our neighbor, to be kind and open to the foreigner. We are witnessing this abuse right now of power in Minneapolis with ICE and this overreach of power. And I know for many, what I'm saying in and of itself is a political stance. However, we're not here to talk about political stances, but rather how we are enmeshed with our belief system. Are we able to look at something objectively, step out of our belief system, and be able to think critically based on a circumstance or a certain situation? We're not talking about faith here because faith is a way of life. So I see that as something different.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But with something like bipartisan politics, it's a choice. We can choose this or this. And what I'm seeing is this polarity with people enmeshed in their belief systems so that when people come together and they have different stances, they can't separate themselves from their belief. They become their belief. And that is why we have this essentially this culture war going on right now that is so politically charged. And it's almost like there's this inability to simply see humanness in these circumstances. And that's, as Christ followers, that's what we're supposed to be doing here. We're supposed to be able to look at those who are weeping and crying in the pain and be able to step in and respond in a way that honors God and honors the foreigner and honors the outcast. And for some reason, politics are getting in the way of that. So
Hmm.
I wanted to ask your opinion as a therapist. What is happening in the mind of someone who is so allegiant to a belief system? And how is this playing out in our real relationships?
Hmm. So, in politics specifically, it becomes a person's self concept. So,
Hmm.
it's exactly what you were just talking about. The person becomes so enmeshed in whatever political party is you're choosing. Okay.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter which one it is. And we're not going to talk about, one
Hmm.
is better than the other.
Hmm.
But whichever one is your political party, you have become possibly so enmeshed in it that you can no longer think logically or critically think for you as your own person. Everything that you are thinking or maybe you're doing, the behaviors you have are all one sided.
Hmm.
It's all one
Okay.
sided
Hmm.
because essentially that enmeshment with politics has shut down your ability to have any critical and logical thinking.
Hmm.
And so you're not thinking, is a person getting hurt? Are people in harm? Gosh, I would hope that people don't want everybody to be in harm, regardless of your political stance.
Mhm.
Like, for heaven's sakes, we're called to just love people and meet them where they are
Mhm.
as Christ followers. So I would hope there are not people who are just sitting around hoping for bad things to happen to people. But I also am realistic to think and know there are people who are waiting for that to happen. And there are people like that. And maybe there is something going on with them that has to do with mental health or how they were raised, how they were taught, but it also could just be the enmeshment in the political view.
Mhm. So it also reminds me of what we were talking about earlier with codependency and this enabling of
Hmm.
behavior. So when someone's enmeshed with a belief system, basically, even if that belief system or people operating within that certain politic are behaving in a certain way, the people who are enmeshed are more likely to almost give them a free pass. Like, wow, this harm done to this person over here, I mean, that's just a byproduct of like the real issue at hand, correct? So we're
Yes,
seeing these people who are being detained that actually are legal. This is just a byproduct of all of the criminals. This is an argument that we're hearing right now. So with enmeshment, we are seeing almost like an excusing of behavior, and that is also codependent. Now, this is a very interesting conversation that we're having here, right? Because I don't necessarily want to make it a political conversation, but to be able to talk about enmeshment and codependency with something other than an actual person, but with basically an ideology, it's a very real and tangible thing. What's happening is this enmeshment with our belief system is then circling back into our actual live relationships. So then
absolutely.
what we hear people saying is, I can't talk to that person because what they believe is against who I am as a person. And I've heard so many people say this. Your beliefs it's literally not who I am. And so what I want to ask is, when did our political belief become who we are as a person? And how do we separate that? How are we able to look at people and the scenarios that present themselves in our everyday lives? How are we able to look at that objectively without aligning ourselves with a political party to the point where we can't think critically and see people in their pain?
Hmm. Yeah. And this happens in friendships. We know of people in our lives that the political views have ruined relationships
Mhm.
and have ruined romantic relationships
Mhm.
because they've so enmeshed themselves in a political side that they can't have a logical, critical conversation
Mhm.
and see the person as a person.
Mm.
It's okay if I disagree with you. At what point did we get to, you always have to be in agreement with me? And
Mhm.
if you're not in agreement with me, then I can't be friends with you
Mhm.
or I can't be linked with you.
There's not an actual threat, right? When you and I have a conversation, let's say you and I have very different political beliefs. Let's say, you're talking about something that you value and I value something else. Does not mean that I'm against you. I'm not against your view. I might just be for something else.
Mhm.
Okay. So there's one wall that we can take down if we can reframe our thinking, that you might be for something and I might be for something. And those two things might be different, but it doesn't mean I'm against you.
Yeah, that wall, if we could take that wall down and to see that person is not against you, it's okay to disagree.
Hmm.
Like, do we always agree with everything if you have children that your child does? No, absolutely not. So if you don't always agree with what your child does, or you have a different belief than your child does, are you just going to end
Hmm.
that relationship and be
Right.
like, you're out of here?
Hmm.
Probably not.
No.
Even if they're an adult child of yours, you probably aren't going to do that,
Hmm.
or vice versa,
Well, and
right?
I think too, there's an established bond and there's established trust between, I would say, probably most parents and their kids.
Yeah.
And partnerships, friendships, there should be an established trust bond. And I think that's important that when we're talking about something like this, where there's polarizing views, there's not an actual threat from me to
Mhm.
you to talk about something that we both disagree on. Now, there is an actual threat being posed in Minneapolis, which is why we're talking about this.
Right.
And that's something completely different. But when we're talking about enmeshment, we are talking about this in our real relationships and how we have positioned ourselves in relation to our political beliefs. And when we see this enmeshment with a belief system, what we're seeing is it's taking priority over real relationships. And the relationship with another person should always be more important than the stance we take on something.
Yeah. And it's probably because of the enmeshment and the
Hmm.
codependency, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the one thing I don't think we've said yet is the polarization,
Hmm.
because polarization is really leading to negative and often irrational beliefs towards one side or
Mm-hmm.
could be one person. So if Heather and I have different political views or beliefs on a certain topic, and I don't agree with her. I might, because I've become enmeshed in my belief, when we're having a conversation, when she gives me her opinion, I have all these irrational beliefs about what she's saying.
Hmm.
I'm not even listening to her. I'm creating all of these irrational thoughts about what she's saying, which is then lending me to be like, oh, Heather, you're a horrible person because you don't believe what I have to believe. And because you don't agree with me, I can't have this relationship anymore.
It's almost like you're reinforcing and coddling your own belief system by becoming negatively charged against mine.
Hmm. Absolutely. Because polarization oftentimes can lead to destruction or negative, hurtful behaviors that you would not have otherwise done. And to add to what you just said, if you have a very strong political view or a very strong view about anything, your social media platforms are going to feed into that. So
Hmm.
you never see the side of the other political party
Hmm.
or the other topic,
Hmm.
the opposite of whatever you believe.
Right.
The only thing that your social media feed's going to show you is the negative stuff.
Hmm.
They're not going to tell you the positive stuff.
Right. So then your view becomes skewed.
Yep.
It's very dependent on what you already believe. It's
Hmm.
almost like confirmation bias.
Oh, absolutely.
And then when you come up against somebody, or not necessarily against somebody, but it probably feels like it, someone who has different views, it feels like an attack just simply to be around somebody that has a different view from you
Hmm.
because you've taken on the identity of your belief system
Yeah.
rather than maintaining your autonomy and being able to look at things with discernment
Hmm.
or even through the lens of scripture. Jesus models what it looks like. In his letters, Paul teaches over and over again to a divided church. So there are multiple examples in the New Testament alone of what it looks like to maintain your role in the body of Christ as your own distinct part, but live in unity with one another. We can do that. And what has happened in our American culture is it's destroyed our ability to
Hmm.
think critically because of the pressure almost and this in your face approach because it's everywhere to pick a side.
Yeah. Pick a side
Mm-hmm.
and not actually see people as people.
Mm-hmm.
We're only seeing the people as whatever the problem is based on whatever
Mm-hmm.
side you've chosen.
Mm-hmm. And then circling back to friendships and enmeshment, I imagine too that with two people who are completely enmeshed, who have blurred boundaries, and it's hard to see themselves as separate entities, what it might feel like when one person does something without the other person,
Mhm.
or when one person decides, I have a new opinion, how that might feel like a betrayal to the other person in the relationship.
Mhm. So let's recap. How can we recognize if we're in a codependent or enmeshment relationship? And maybe you are the person who has codependency, and maybe you aren't the person who is dependent on somebody else, but somebody is very heavily dependent on you.
Hmm.
Where do we even start? Where do we go?
I think we say self reflection. That is something that we say in every podcast, but that is what helps us grow. We
Yeah.
cannot grow and move forward without looking in the past. So, evaluating relationships is good and healthy.
Hmm.
And I think it's probably easy if you have anxiety or you feel a lack of peace in a relationship to know this might not be healthy, because peace is going to be present in healthy relationships. It just is. It does not mean that everything is perfect in a relationship, but you will have peace in healthy relationships.
Yeah.
There will be a lack of peace in unhealthy relationships. You will feel drained, exhausted, suffocated, maybe if you're a wild free spirit like me. Those are the telltale signs for me in a relationship if someone is exhibiting codependent traits. And that's something that I would then need to address with that person. Hey, this is starting to feel suffocating. There needs to be some boundaries put in place here.
Hmm. Those are all really good examples. And I would like to add too, if you feel like you can't make a decision, you can't share your opinion, you're always putting somebody else's emotional and physical needs before yours, then you might be the codependent person. And that doesn't mean, and I need you to hear me when I say this, that doesn't mean there is something wrong with you and you are broken.
Correct.
You're not broken. I I can't stand that saying when people
Mm-hmm.
are like, "Oh, I'm broken. I'm just messed up." No, you're not broken. There was something that happened in your childhood,
Mm-hmm.
and that is now coming out in certain behaviors. You're not broken. It's just now you need to recognize it, you need to self-reflect on it, and you need to start making some changes
Mm-hmm.
because you can change it. You also might need to have a conversation with the person that you are codependent on or maybe enmeshed with
Mm-hmm.
to say, "Hey, I'm starting to think that maybe I'm codependent on you because I never have my own opinion and I feel like I'm always putting your needs first. Do
Mm-hmm.
I act like that? Do you feel that from me?"
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think with enmeshment, if one person is starting to realize that they are in an enmeshed relationship, uh, and it's just one person,
Mhm.
that is going to be a very difficult situation to get out of. And I think it's so important to remember that we do not need to just end a relationship with someone that we have loved and invested in for years and just say, well, this is enmeshed and it's unhealthy, so we just need to end it and I need to walk away. That's not the solution. It doesn't need to be. We can learn how to reorient ourselves around people in a very healthy way. And sometimes that looks like communicating a very clear boundary while saying, I love you, but I need to figure this out. Or I need a little bit of space. And it doesn't mean that I don't love you. It doesn't mean I don't want you in my life. I do want you in my life in a healthy way. And I got to work on my stuff.
Mhm.
That is a very helpful way to communicate to somebody without hurting them, and that person might feel hurt because you're making a change, but you will find peace in that decision, regardless of the outcome, when you're making that decision in a healthy way to create a boundary and you're communicating that boundary. If you are trying to remedy an enmeshment situation. Conversation is so much better than just walking away.
Hmm. I do want to add this. If you feel like someone is so enmeshed with you and you've had a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
it is okay to walk away.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I know we've talked about our Heather and I's experience and me ghosting her. But sometimes, if you've tried to have a conversation, you've tried to offer solutions, you've tried to problem solve with the
Mm-hmm.
other person,
Mm-hmm.
and they can't see where you are, and it's just offense, 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 or maybe
Mm-hmm.
blame, 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 blame.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to walk away and say, this is over and I'm not going to do this relationship anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter if it's a friend, if it's a parent, if, it's a spouse, and maybe that's where you have to draw the line
Mm-hmm.
because
Right.
you need to keep yourself healthy and safe
Mm-hmm.
too.
When we talk about fighting for, we think about fighting for relationships. And I think when we fight for the relationship first, and that's our first response, we do engage in the difficult conversations. We do set boundaries, whether they are just for our knowledge or we communicate those out loud. It's always the first step to healing and creating peace and being a peacemaker. But like Jamie said, when we've already tried that and
Hmm.
we've exhausted those healthy responses to recognizing an unhealthy relationship, there are consequences.
Yep.
There are consequences to a particular person in a relationship not wanting to take responsibility for their behavior. And we always want to be in a position where we are growing. I never want to be any age where I say, I think I've finally arrived. I've learned everything I'm going to know. I mean, I always want to be growing and learning and working on myself and trying to be the best version of myself. That's daily work. I agree with Jamie, and I feel like it is okay to walk away from those relationships, especially if they're holding us back from moving forward.
Hmm. As you were talking, something that's so funny is you want to keep growing. I want to keep growing. I literally pictured in my head, I have these theories floating around in my head between the age, like it starts at the age right around 45, where you can choose to be stagnant or you can choose to make change and growth, according to one of the theorists.
Oh.
And that's what I was picturing. I was picturing the stages, and I just had to giggle to myself because I'm so nerdy.
And you know that. And hey, we both want to grow. That's great.
Oh,
And we hope you
man.
want to grow too.
I know. We do hope you want to grow. Maybe you're not codependent and nobody's codependent on you and you have no enmeshment relationships. Yay.
Yeah. Good job setting healthy boundaries.
Good job.
Mhm.
Continue it.
Yeah.
But maybe you have recognized some unhealthy codependency enmeshment relationships, or maybe it is with politics or
Mhm.
certain political world views.
Mhm.
We encourage you to do some self-reflection, maybe even do some journaling.
Mhm.
Stay off social media for a little while because it's just going to feed and feed.
So, as we let you go, keep in mind that you are an integral part of the body of Christ and you play a unique role that only you can play. So, regardless of whether you find yourself in a codependent or an enmeshed relationship, if we can keep in the back of our minds always that we are part of one body as believers, we can maintain our autonomy in our identity. And I know it's weird to say, to put the word autonomy in the same sentence as body of many parts, but we aren't called to look like one another identically and enmeshed with one another. We are called to step into the fullness of who God created each of us to be and to play that part and to play it well, honoring Him and one another. And so if we can keep that in the back of our minds as we approach the idea of politics, as we approach relationships that might leave us feeling anxious, then with that view in the back of our minds, we can love that person through that view rather than through a lens of enmeshment with a belief. And I think that's one of the most important things we need to remember in a hot topic button day that we live in.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you all for listening. Hopefully you gained some insight in this podcast. And we'd like to remind you, if you would like to know when our next episode drops, go ahead and hit the like and follow buttons. We're also on Facebook for those of you who don't know that, and you can find us really easily and you can follow us there.
Yep.
We have some pretty funny videos that we occasionally post, so you might keep an eye out.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. See
Peace
you guys
out.
later next time.